This begins the list of the victims of the Pentagon. Specialist Craig S. Edmundson, U.S. Army. Petty Officer 3, Melissa Rose Barnes, U.S. Navy. Master Sergeant Max Bilkey, retired. Petty Officer 2, Chris Romero Bishunda, U.S. Navy. Carrie R. Blackburn. Colonel Canfield D. Boone, Army National Guard. Donna M. Bowen. Alan P. Boyle. Petty Officer 3, Christopher L. Buford, U.S. Navy. Petty Officer 3, Daniel Caballero, U.S. Navy. Sergeant First Class Jose O. Calderon Olmedo, U.S. Army. Angeline C. Carter. Sharon S. Carver. Sergeant First Class John J. Chata, U.S. Army, retired. Rosa Maria Chapa. Julian T. Cooper. Lieutenant Commander Eric A. Cranford, U.S. Navy. Ada M. Davis. Captain Gerald F. DeConto, U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Jerry D. Dickerson, U.S. Army. Petty Officer 1 Johnny Doctor Jr., U.S. Navy. Captain Robert E. Dolan Jr., U.S. Navy. Commander William H. Donovan, U.S. Navy. Commander Patrick Dunn, U.S. Navy. Petty Officer 1 Edward T. Earnhardt, U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Commander Robert R. Elseth, U.S. Navy Reserve. Petty Officer 3 Jamie Fallon, U.S. Navy. Amelia V. Fields. Gerald P. Fisher. Petty Officer 2 Matthew M. Flacco, U.S. Navy. Sandra N. Foster. Captain Lawrence D. Getzfeld, U.S. Navy. Cortez Gee. Brenda C. Gibson. Colonel Ronald F. Golinsky, U.S. Army, retired. Diane Hale McKenzie. Carolyn B. Hellman. Sheila M.S. Hine. Petty Officer 1 Ronald J. Hemingway, U.S. Navy. Major Wallace Cole Hogan, Jr., U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Jimmy I. Hawley, U.S. Army, retired. Angela M. Holtz. Brady K. Howell. Peggy M. Hurt. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen N. Highland, Jr., U.S. Army. Lieutenant Colonel Robert J. Heimel, U.S. Air Force, retired. Sergeant Major Lacey B. Ivory, U.S. Army. Lieutenant Colonel Dennis M. Johnson, U.S. Army. Judith L. Jones. Brenda Kegler. Lieutenant Michael S. Lamana, U.S. Navy. David W. Lachek. Samantha L. Lightbourne Allen. Major Stephen V. Long, U.S. Army. James T. Lynch, Jr. Terrence M. Lynch. Petty Officer 2 Nehaman Lyons IV, U.S. Navy. Shelley A. Marshall. Teresa M. Martin. Ada L. Mason Aker. Lieutenant Colonel D. E. Matson, U.S. Army. Lieutenant General Timothy J. Maud, U.S. Army. Robert J. Maxwell. Molly L. McKenzie. Patricia E. McKinley. Major Ronald D. Millam, U.S. Army. Gerald P. Moran, Jr. Odessa V. Morris. Petty Officer 1 Brian A. Moss, U.S. Navy. Teddington H. Moy. Lieutenant Commander Patrick J. Murphy, U.S. Navy Reserve. Kang Nok Nguyen. Petty Officer 2 Michael A. Noeth, U.S. Navy. Ruben S. Orlando. Diana P. Padro. Lieutenant Jonas M. Panic, U.S. Navy Reserve. Major Clifford L. Patterson, Jr., U.S. Army. Lieutenant Darren H. Pontel, U.S. Navy Reserve. Scott Powell. Captain Jack D. Punches, U.S. Navy, retired. Petty Officer 1 Joseph J. Picor, Jr., U.S. Navy. Deborah A. Romsor. Rhonda Sue Rasmussen. Petty Officer 1 Marcia D. Ratchford, U.S. Navy. Martha M. Rensky. Cecilia E. Lawson Richard.